Most people lack imagination and they don't dream big enough for themselves. And I'll be the first to tell you, I used to fall into that trap. Let me explain myself. Some of the best memories of my childhood were spent at our lake cabin in western Wisconsin, and I'll tell you more about that if you watch on, but because I had such wonderful experiences on the lake growing up, it was always my dream to have a cabin on the lake one day, but I assumed it was going to be when I was much older. My husband and I would dream about owning a lake place one day, but we just made the assumption that it wasn't going to be able to happen for us for a long time, instead of exploring whether it was feasible earlier on. Let me tell you, it actually was within reach for us much earlier than we thought, and if you were thinking about a lake place, it might be for you too, but we had to make some serious concessions. So I'm going to tell you about the good, the bad, and the ugly about owning our lake place. I'm going to be super honest with you, and some of what I'll tell you isn't ideal, but please don't think I'm complaining. We feel really fortunate to have a lake place, but I want to share with you everything so that if you are thinking about getting a lake place, you're going into it with your eyes wide open. If you own a lake place, I want to hear what you love about it and also what you'd love to change about it. I'm on the boat, but don't worry, the anchor is down. So in case you were wondering about who was driving, I just want to put your mind at rest. So I'm going to start with the obvious. You're going to get a lot less house for your money when you buy a house on a lake because you're paying for the lake. We love our property on the lake, but here's the bad part. Our lot is big and beautiful, but there isn't as much usable space on it. We have a really small grassy area in the yard, and most of the rest of the property is natural, when what that means is that it's just these random perennial plants that do really well in shade with no maintenance and no watering. There are lots of lake homes that have huge grassy yards, but to be perfectly honest, those come at a premium, and it just wasn't in our budget. This was the only lake home that was in our budget at that time, and it was also the only one that was for sale in our desired area. It's crazy to look at the comparison of the kinds of yards and landscaping that comparably priced homes not on a lake have. They look like totally manicured palaces, and then we have this kind of wild and natural and heavily wooded yard. And don't get me wrong, we could cut down trees and put in grass and do landscaping, but by now we've seen the owls and eagles and woodpeckers and fox and baby deer and bucks that use the trees and live in them and rest in their shade, so it'd be pretty hard to cut the trees down at this point. Another not so great thing, and I'm still just in the yard, I haven't even gotten to the house yet, is that our backyard is super sloped down to the lake. We actually have over 75 steps to get down to the lake. Lake homes with less slope tend to be more desirable because it's really attractive to be able to step out the door, down just a few steps, and walk to the shoreline. And it's much easier for entertaining, and it's easier to get to the lake. But again, this was the only lake home that was for sale, so we opted to buy an imperfect lake home instead of hoping that something suitable would come up, which eventually it did, like a year later, and for a couple $100,000 more. We also bought a home that didn't have a lot of usable shoreline. We have 155 feet of shoreline, but when we moved in, we couldn't even walk from one end of the property to the other. It was so sloped and overgrown with trees and undergrowth and rotting logs from fallen down trees. When we wanted to use our lake, we would walk down the stairs, then the last 15 feet or so was walking on packed dirt, and when it rained, it got really slippery, so we would walk down to the dock, sometimes slip down to the dock, swim by the dock, and then not really have anywhere to sit and relax since we had a young child. So we'd have to go back up the 75 plus stairs, which wasn't ideal. So our second year living here, we hired a landscape architect and had some plans drawn up to make our yard more user-friendly. And after getting bids and having a lot of companies decline to bid because the hill was too sloped and they didn't want to take on our project, we hired a landscaping company and we had some boulder retaining walls put in, a path put in from one end of the property to the other, a few more steps leading all the way down to the dock, a sand beach with a boulder retaining wall, and we also put in a non-permanent shed to store water toys. And that all might sound so straightforward, but the reality is the Bobcat operator showed up to work at our property the first day, and then he looked at the hill and said, "You don't pay me enough to drive this Bobcat down that hill," and then refused to work. So everything was on hold until the owner of the company could get out here and personally drive the Bobcat down the hill all morning long and show him it was safe. So it's a much more usable lakeshore area now, but it's still over 75 steps to get down here. And by the end of summer, we pretty much have buns of steel from walking up and down so many steps.
This time, we're going to grapevine right and grapevine left.
If we forget something at the top of the house and we're down at the lakeshore, it's a huge effort to get back all the way up there. We've had friends jokingly, but kind of not jokingly, suggest that we get a funicular, which lots of people don't know. It's a kind of trolley cart that goes on a track and hauls stuff up and down steep slopes. And I've just listed several things that aren't great about our lake home, and I didn't even get inside the home yet. so watch on. At the risk of you thinking I'm a complainer, which I'm not a complainer, let's switch gears and talk about the good. Or should I say the great. There is so much to love about living on the lake. I'm going to tell you some of the things we love the most. We swim in the lake when it's hot in the summer, and it is refreshing. We have so many outdoor activities to do with fishing and swimming and boating and sitting by the water, skipping rocks and laying on hammocks and stand-up paddleboarding. We water ski and we take the kids to go tubing. Who am I kidding? We go tubing ourselves too. I sometimes go for long swims and swim a half a mile or more for exercise. Out-of-town visitors love to come and see us during summertime, so we never have a dull moment. We have people we love coming in all summer long. We have little kids, and after dinner we go and sit on the beach with the kids by the water and play in the sand and watch the fish and the birds and the boats go by. We have a resident bald eagle. We call him Max, and he sits in the big oak tree by the water and crunches loudly on fish and then poops all over our shoreline and leaves fish bones on our shoreline. Maybe I actually should have included that part with the bad parts. When it comes fall, we have bonfires on our beach by the water and bundle up and sit by the water. The leaves turn beautiful colors, and we sit on our dock and enjoy the stunning show that Mother Nature puts on for us. And in the winter, some of our neighbors make ice skating rinks on the ice. They use an auger to drill through the ice and then use a pump to pump out the water from the lake and then hose that water over the ice, and the water freezes and smooths it out so the ice is smooth enough for people to ice skate on and play hockey on without big bumps on the ice that will trip people up. These are the same activities that I have such incredible memories of doing as a kid at our lake cabin in western Wisconsin. What I remember most was how I felt when I was up there. I loved the slowed down pace of life, being outside all day and spending time with my family. That was in the 90s before cell phones and modern technology, but with all the outdoor activities we do at our lake home, it's a great way to be connected with the people that you love and be present in your life. Another incredible thing above and beyond all the wonderful things we do associated with living on a lake properties value appreciates at higher rates than non-lakefront properties. So we've had some serious appreciation for our home, which is nice to know, but since we're planning on staying here for the long term, it's not money that we would use or even have access to unless we sold, which we aren't going to, or unless we refinanced, which we're not going to do that either, since interest rates are higher now than the interest rate we have on our property. Another massive benefit is that we won't want to buy a lake cabin now, since our primary home is on the lake. My dream all my life was to someday have a lake cabin to enjoy with my family, but then I realized we didn't have to wait until someday, and then it was actually within reach to buy our home on the lake, and in the process, we saved ourselves hundreds of thousands of dollars on the purchase price of a second home as a lake cabin and many, many hours of commuting to and from that lake cabin. By now, I've shared with you the bad and the good, so let's get down to the ugly. I've told you all about our yard already, but I haven't even gotten to the home yet. Our home was built in 1958. As I've mentioned, this was the only lake home on our lake for sale, and it was also the only lake home in our area that we could afford. Homes in the 50s were built differently than the style of home that's common today. First off, we have a split level home. Now, I sell real estate in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and I see a lot of homes, and there are some good split levels that have an attached garage, and the garage door opens up to the landing, and there's a coat closet right there and room for a bench for people to sit on and take off their shoes. And then there's a decent kind of split level home where there's a coat closet to hang your coats, but then there's our house, which doesn't even have a coat closet in the entry, and the entry area is so small it doesn't even have room for a little bench for people to sit down and take off their shoes. Now, I live in Minnesota. In the wintertime, our boots get covered with snow and ice and salt. And if a home doesn't have a good system for where to put wet, dirty boots when people take them off, like a rubber tray, then that drips all over the ground in the entryway. And in our case, we don't even have somewhere for people to sit, so they have to sit on the stairs and take off their boots. It is really not ideal. Also, with split levels, it's pretty open, so the sound carries very well throughout the house. The next thing that is not ideal is our garage is not attached to our house. Our January and February winters can get to negative temperatures here. Imagine parking in the garage and lugging groceries along the pathway with the wind whipping up from the frozen lake like a wind tunnel in negative temperatures. That is seriously what we do in the wintertime. And again, most other homes that cost around the same amount but aren't on a lake have attached, heated, oversized garages with epoxy flooring. Another downright ugly thing about the lake home we bought is the bedrooms are typical 1958 bedrooms. Pretty cozy, which is a euphemism for they're really small, and there is no owner's suite or master bedroom, which is a term we really don't use in real estate anymore, but in case you didn't know what I meant by owner's suite, that's why I used it. So no owner's suite means that my husband and I don't have an ensuite or attached bathroom, so we share the upstairs bathroom with our kids. If you don't know what it's like sharing a bathroom with little kids, let me tell you a little about it. If someone's using the toilet, the kids barge in. If I'm showering, the kids barge in and try to get in the shower with me. If I lock the door to the bathroom, the kids stand at the door banging on the door, and the 2-year-old yells, "Kaka, kaka." So then I have to rush out of the shower to let him in to access the potty, only to find out that he really doesn't have to go. He just knows that he'll get a really quick response when he says that word. And now he gets to be in the bathroom with me. Sometimes there are 4 people crammed into the bathroom brushing their teeth, and the pets come in too, and it is really something. We have 2 more bathrooms downstairs, but we're probably not going to go all the way downstairs just to brush our teeth. Another drawback of the 1958 size bedrooms and no owner's suite is that our closet is pretty small, so we have all our clothes crammed in there and have to rotate seasonal clothes. It's a minor inconvenience, but not what we would have envisioned for our forever home. But again, we chose to live on a lake, so here we are. Also, our house is just pretty small. We have 3 bedrooms and we have 2 kids, so pretty soon we won't have enough room for a guest bedroom anymore. But there's not really any room to modify the internal structure of the home to add another bedroom or to get the owner's suite we're looking for. Or if there is, we have not figured out how to do that just yet. Are you leaning toward a lake home or a second home, and why? I want to hear from you where you're at with the journey, so drop me a comment below, unless you don't have anything nice to say, in which case, sayonara.